For content information and the link to the written version of this chapter, please check the description below. This is the 10th chapter of Serving 1 of a Doughnut from Cakeopia, and is titled Through Birthday's Eyes. Consider supporting me over on my Cash App by donating to my GoFundMe to help support my transition, or you can check in on my commissions by looking at the links down below. Now onto the story. Beedee. Birthday? Beedee woke up with a jolt. The damp cloth that had laid over her candle to stop any fires fell, causing the candle to spark back to life. The cool breeze swayed the curtain to the small rustic room. Slowly climbing out of bed, she didn't focus too much on her surroundings. She approached a mirror. Creak. The floorboard spoke as the bare foot stepped on it. She arrived at a mirror sat uncomfortably on the wall. As she wiped her eyes, she screamed when they saw her face. Staring back at Beedee wasn't her face, it was a man. His face was still made of cake, but it was stricter. His jawline was strong and held a small beard of piped icing. His icing hair was nowhere near as long as Beedee's. It stuck to his head in a neatly piped dollop. The candle was still there. That's how Beedee knew he was her. The candle was in the same place as Beedee's had been. The eyes that stared back were almost pure white. It was a daunting sight, considering Beedee was so used to seeing her one pink and one blue eye. She tried to speak, but the man seemed unaware of her presence. He just continued his grooming in the mirror. He used a small, flat, silver instrument to smooth his beard and his hair. He turned to look at his pillow, which had a stain of icing where his head had been laying. Walking over slowly, Beedee felt as if she was being dragged to the bed, as her hands, which she wasn't in control of, lifted the pillow and wiped away the cream. "Oh, birthday boy," a woman sang, dancing into the room. She had soft golden sponge skin and dazzling golden eyes. Eres caliente." Her mouth watered when she saw the shirtless man standing by his bed. Beedee felt uncomfortable, as if she herself was being stared at through the body of the man. The woman swanned over to the man and placed a soft cake hand on his bare chest. She got up onto her tiptoes and whispered in his ear. The vibrations of her voice made Beedee shudder. She wanted to run, but she was trapped within this body, a body she didn't own. "Jen, will you please let me at least get dressed?" The deep voice of the man spoke through a mouth that wasn't Beedee's. Genoa let out a sigh and kissed the man on the cheek before slapping his posterior as she left the room. What was happening? Beedee tried piecing it together in her mind. Was it her mind? Was her mind now within his mind? It made no sense. None of this made sense. The man dressed as Beedee thought. She tried closing her eyes to avoid the sight of him dressing, but she was unable to look away. She saw with his eyes now. The man dressed in a simple, loose grey linen shirt, which he fastened with a brown leather belt. He pulled on his dark brown trousers and headed out the door, without bothering to put on any footwear. This was clearly his home. Why else would he be so comfortable being barefoot? Beedee could tell he was a man who took pride in his appearance, even if he could only afford rags. She could respect that. Suddenly they were downstairs. Beedee couldn't even remember seeing any stairs, but here they were, sitting on a wooden chair watching Genoa pace up and down the room. Was she wearing different clothes? Was this another day? It made no sense. "We need a way to get the gold from the breads. If we're going to build a dynasty, we need money. Those breads have held the power for far too long," the man told Genoa. She nodded thoughtfully. "We need to make the people hate them. Force them into a situation where their wealth is torn from them, so we can gain the power." She giggled excitedly. Beedee felt his head nod. Her eyes were forced to look over to a quill sitting in a pot of thick blank ink. "We can write a book discrediting their reputation." Genoa clapped her hands together in response. "We can write it in Espanol. That way no one aside from us will know what it says. If they want the information, they have no choice but to come to us." The man considered this. "I've told you before, Jen, it's not Spanish, it's your tongue now. Spanish is from the other world." "But you're right. If only we can read the text, people will have no choice but to believe us." Beedee wanted to throw up. She knew now what was happening. She was reliving her past, back in her old body before she was who she was now, or who she will be if this were truly the past. To escape this limbo, She knew all she could do was watch. Perhaps it would give a clue as to how everything fit together. The old birthday grabbed his quill and began writing in Genoir's tongue. Beedee had originally skimmed through the book, but now she was forced to read every disgusting, sick lie about the breads. They now stood on the stage, surrounded by old residents, normal villagers who had just been shopping in the local market. In the corner of her old eye, Beedee saw what looked like a Doughnut walking away, ignoring the crowd, blissfully unaware of the world around him. She wished she could ignore it, and instead, here she was, holding open the pages to a book that she had written a lifetime ago. The breads want to keep their wealth for themselves, Birthday accused, pointing a finger to a bread Beedee didn't recognise, shaking his head. No, they don't, a man stepped forward. His skin was soft like a cake, or hard like the breads had been. Could this be a cookie? Go home, cookie. Your treacherous tongue won't stand here. There were a few cheers from the crowd. The bread began looking around frantically, suddenly feeling vulnerable. Cookie tried comforting the bread, but it was no use. He ran. See how they react when they are placed on trial? Birthday shouted to the crowd. They are guilty. They may have been here long before us, but that doesn't mean they get to keep their wealth to themselves. It's all written in this old text I hold in my hand. Beedee watched the bread run towards the woods as a small group of people tore from the crowd and began chasing him. She felt the face of the man she was within twitching into a grin. How could this man be her? She could never imagine a life where all that was important to her was gold. She certainly wouldn't vilify others to obtain it. It's wrong, father, a young man spoke to Birthday in a newly refurbished home. Beedee recognised this man from his painting. It was Sponge Cake, her grandfather. Wait, he had called him his father. Birthday used to be her grandfather's father? That was way too messed up for her to comprehend. Sponge, tell me, is it wrong to want the best for the people you love? Sponge shook his head. No, of course not, but it is wrong to oppress an entire community of people just to exploit their wealth. The breads were here long before us. They made that gold. They earned that gold. It belongs to them. Beedee felt pride for her grandfather standing up to her old self. She wished she could use that same energy when she confronted her mother. They laugh at us as Spongier. They sit in their golden homes thinking they are better than us. They get away with whatever they want. Their pharaoh looks down upon us as if we were nothing more than currents. We used to be friends, you know, Aish and I. I looked up to them, loved them like a sibling. Birthday grabbed his shorter son's face and moved closer. So trust me when I tell you, Nino. They have changed. The world has changed. We can't let them get away with it. Sponge pulled away from his father's hands. I don't believe you. I don't believe they would do anything to cause us harm. They just want to live in peace. Beedee, or Birthday, now stood with Genoir, holding her hand at a scenic meadow close to the woods. It's beautiful, mi amor. Why bring me here? All this skipping forward through time was making Beedee feel dizzy. It became clear to her that although she was inside his head, she couldn't read his thoughts. She was only a silent spectator. Judging by the movements he was making, it was difficult to tell his intentions with Genoir. Was he just taking Genoir on a surprise date? Why couldn't Beedee remember any of his past? It was clearly her. The longer she stayed within her mind, she realised she wasn't the same person. She knew the actions that were happening were her fault. She couldn't deny that. She had been him in the past, but was it truly her? This seemed like a completely different person. Genoir looked lovingly into Birthday's eyes. Her warm golden eyes met his, and Beedee could feel his smile grow. Sorry, he said as he threw Genoir to the ground. For a moment both Genoir and Beedee were confused as Genoir looked up from the ground in shock. Then they saw, within moments, the wheel of the heavy cart filled with supplies for the market rolled over Genoir's back, slowly crushing her. Cookie, who was pushing the cart, didn't see her underneath until it was too late. He tripped. The contents of the cart fell and squashed Genoir, causing an explosion of cake. Birthday stepped back and pretended to look shocked. What have you done? He screamed at the Cookie. Cookie, in a state of panic, ran towards the woods, much like the bread had before being chased. Beedee was stunned by what she had just witnessed, but she didn't have much time to process it. If you're enjoying this chapter, consider donating to my Patreon, where you can see videos like this a day before everyone else. That's only £1 a month over on my Patreon, and the link will be linked down below. Now back to the video. It really was their fault, wasn't it? Sponge said, holding the book tightly in his arms. That's right. Your mother was expired in cold jam by her bread. The world seemed to spin before Beedee ended up watching on as a group of breads, now in rags, were hauling bricks and on their knees in exhaustion. They deserve every bit of the pain they feel, Sponge growled, also watching the breads work. They certainly do. Birthday replied, proud of his achievement. He had done it. He'd given his son a reason to hate the breads, enough to force them out of their wealth and use their own gold against them to build a mansion for the cakes. Beedee sobbed internally. Just earlier she had been so proud of Sponge for standing up to his father, but Birthday hadn't seen that as a sign to stop. He saw it as a sign to prove his son wrong. He was so wrapped up in his greed for power, he orchestrated the expiration of the woman he had seemingly loved, or at the very least cared for. How had he done it? How did he know Cookie would be passing by at that exact moment? In all honesty, Beedee didn't care. Just the thought that someone was capable of doing something so despicable made her shiver. It was made worse knowing it had once been herself. This mind she was inside had once belonged to her. These twisted thoughts she must have had once been hers. All she wanted to do was tear her eyes away from the scene, but she was forced to watch for goodness knows how long she had done this. Now Beedee was in a place she recognised. It was the mansion, her home. Could she call it that now? Surely the place she called home couldn't be a place built by slaves. Where would she live now? With SJ at the cafe? Maybe at Granny Eccles' abandoned place? No, that was too depressing. As if summoned at will, Granny Eccles walked into the room. Maddie and Victoria are asleep, so try not to disturb them. Birthday nodded to her as she passed and continued walking to Sponge's office. Knock, knock. Birthday? Sponge asked, not looking up from his paperwork. Beedee thought this was interesting. Just a moment ago, Sponge had referred to Birthday as father, and now he called him Birthday. Now, whatever happened to father? Birthday tutted. Sponge slammed his fist onto the desk. They escaped. Every single one, he scowled. Not only that, but they took the gold too. Birthday laughed. Oh, come now, they didn't take all the gold. We are still the richest cakes in town. So this was when the breads escaped to hide underground. But Maddie and Victoria were both there. Surely the breads had fled away before. Was it possible that at the time skips were now blending together at such a quickened pace that events that should be years apart now coincided? Who knows? Maybe she had just assumed it was longer. How long had Beedee been within her old self? An hour? A day? It was impossible to tell. I've drawn up plans to build a wall around the land. Stop anyone from escaping. Sponge pushed across the sketch of a map. A very familiar map. A map of the current Cakeopia. I plan on calling it Spongington. Birthday scoffed. That will never catch on. Call it something like Cakeopia. Sponge thought about this for a moment before shaking his head. Utopia sounds too close to utopia. I want it to be clear that if you step out of line, you will not be in paradise. Birthday gave a sinister grin, a smile Beedee was not used to making. She wanted to stroke her cheek to numb the soreness. Cakeopia, then. It's the same thing, just missing the T. Sponge quickly scribbled it down on the map. I like that idea. No way, Maddie yelled. I want no part of this. My sons don't deserve any of this. She placed her hand to her forehead, shaking it viciously. It's only in the case you expire like my grandmother. I need some successor to run Cakeopia, Sponge promised. Maddie glanced at Birthday before walking closer to her father. You never told me that happened to grandmother. Sponge gulped, unsure of what to say. He seemed wise enough to realise Maddie wouldn't appreciate knowing the breads had expired her grandmother. She had an argument with a cookie, Birthday chimed in. Sponge was thankful for what he assumed was a lie. Look, I know you just want the best for me, but I'm really not interested, Father. I'm sorry. Maddie turned to leave, but Birthday had the door closed. Grandad, let me through, Maddie sighed. Madeira, you're being unreasonable. Your father is offering you a kingdom if he expires. Maddie tried pushing past Birthday, but he pushed her back. Maddie then charged forwards to Birthday, who was now furious. He shoved his granddaughter back so hard she knocked over Sponge, who had stood to stop the altercation. Sponge flailed backwards until he tripped and smashed through the window behind the desk chair. Maddie and Birthday both rushed over to the smashed window and looked down, seeing nothing. Sponge had expired on impact. "That's right, Victoria. Cakeopia can be all yours now. It was your father's dream." Victoria stared at the portrait of her father sullenly. "Why did he choose Maddie first?" she asked with a pang of bitterness in her voice. "She was older than you, Ninya. Don't take it too personally. Besides, she was gone now. She fled with Swiss and Jocondi, after she expired your father." Victoria, Beedee's mother, looked directly into the eyes of Birthday. "It still hurts," she cursed. Like her past self, Beedee didn't recognise this version of her mother, this bitter, jealous version of her mother. She could now see clear as day who SJ had seen, who sent Blondie and Brownie to expire all those innocent people. She could see the anger. "I'll take it." Victoria turned away. "Get the wall built. I'm ready to become the boss." She grinned, looking over her shoulder. Birthday clawed at the wall. "Where are you going, Grandad?" Victoria cackled. Birthday turned to see Victoria, Blondie and Brownie standing before him. Beedee could feel Birthday's chest pounding. "It doesn't have to be like this," Birthday begged. "You could have thought about that before Milfoy caught you snooping around the office looking for a way to take over. Was this always your plan, Grandad? Did you always plan to stab me in the back?" Birthday shook his head desperately. "No, you have it all wrong. I was looking for a clue to where Maddie might have been fled to." Victoria's jaw dropped. "Even now, you care more about Madeira than me. Who cares where she went? She can be with the cookies for all I care." Beedee was curious where her auntie could possibly be hiding with her cousins. Now she knew the reason why she escaped. She was relieved to know she wasn't the only good cake in the family. Well, she was at least a good cake now. She could tell, watching through Birthday's eyes, that to some extent he had regretted the choices he made. Of course, it was too little too late. Beedee watched firsthand as Victoria gave the order. Blondie and Brownie both approached the knife, with a quick stab on either side of the body. That was it. Poof. Expired. Beedee woke with a jolt, her flame quickly rejuvenating itself. "Where am I?" she asked as the curtains were torn open, revealing a dim afternoon glow. "Oh good, you're awake. Had us all worried there." Beedee looked around, stroking her forehead similar to how Maddie had done. Nothing made sense. "What day is it?" Beedee asked groggily. Tiramisu smiled at Beedee. "It's Friday." Beedee practically jumped out of the old bed. "Friday, but that means..." Tiramisu smiled sympathetically. "It means get dressed. Tidy your appearance. Your party begins in an hour." Thank you for watching this video. I'm sorry about the screaming at the end. My family are being annoying again, but I tried my best to record as best as I could because this is the only time I could record and I wasn't able to do it yesterday. So thank you for watching this video. On Thursday, I will hopefully, no, not Thursday, Friday or whatever, I will hopefully be releasing the next... I'm so sorry about the shouting. On Thursday, well, it's supposed to be Thursday, I'll be releasing the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hidden Disabilities blog entry accompaniment. On the weekend, I'll be releasing my Arachnida Spider-Woman short story, and next Monday I'll be releasing week 3 of my Under the Queer Umbrella Thames Island This Week entry. So thank you for watching again. Subscribe to see more videos like this, and I will see you all next time. Bye.